All right, I've got 6:01 on April 10th, so I will go ahead and call us to order for first our work session and then followed by our regular business meeting. First item up is roll call, so if you'd chime out when I call your name. Ricardo? Bill? Here. Christie? Here. Crystal?
Here.
Heidi? Richard?
Here.
Do you need notation about some constraints? Do you need notation for some constraints? All right, if you guys all join me. Allegiance. United States. Alrighty, thanks for joining us. Back in face. You haven't been here before yet, but once. But hopefully this will give us a little more ability to interact. And that space is beautiful in there, but it's captured on.
Glenn, sorry to interrupt, but I think the your microphone seems to be kind of cutting in and out a bit. So just an FYI.
Oh, thanks.
Do I need to be talking at it louder?
No, just keep your head like that for the entire meeting. That should be perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. Alrighty, so our first item up in the work session is OSBA policies, first reading. We have four items there, so I don't know if you want to give us a little background on those.
Yeah, just a little bit. This is one of the last ones from the November policy update from last year. The reduction for recall of licensed staff, and there's an AR that accompanies it. As you will note in the bottom, these are related to laws that were changed in 2021. So these are not OARs, they're not recommendations, this is actually labor law now. And this is the policy that supports the implementation of the law, making sure that we are following the law. Our contract was revised to reflect the changes in the 2021 law so that they match the policy that's been written here. And the associate, it was important to the association to encourage meeting our strategic planning goals, to make sure that our policies are aligned, that their part, that they were going to say, we want our contract to align with this as well. So that is why these things were, these policies were set forth for your review. And this is just a first reading, so you can send comments or thoughts to me after you've had some time to look at it.
Comments?
Well, the ORS wasn't included that I could find. Which one is it?
It's already, it's at the bottom of each of the policy, the ORS is.
Yeah, which ORS though? Is it
There are two.
There
are two. The ORS 342934 is the one that was changed, HB, in response to House Bill 2001 in 2021.
So just a point of order, Diane. The printed copy shows these coming first. The copy I'm looking at in our notes shows this in a different order. Should I follow this one?
I would just go alphabetical, you know.
Okay, well, the one online has it as item C. So I just, if people are following, I don't know.
Oh, no,
If we're following this copy, we'll do that, so.
Okay.
Yep.
So this is where we are.
Yeah, yep. yeah, we're not skipping somebody.
Okay. Okay. Because we are talking about GCPA, right?
Correct.
Yes, yep.
Actually, the one online, Glenn, maybe you just didn't refresh yours or something, but the one that's online is the same order.
Is it, okay, I'm probably on the wrong place in our folder then, could be an older version. I'll just make sure I stay with this one. All right, well, hearing no comments on this.
Well, I don't like how it's written. Because it puts that above seniority and all the other merit and competency. And like when I look at the ORS, it isn't written that way. Competencies on the top.
Which ORS are you reading out
Uh,
of?
yeah, I just Googled this one.
I believe there's a interpretation, I don't remember where, got it from Lisa Freely. But I can't remember the source. In legal law, that when the items are listed, none of them are listed in order of importance. They're all very equal.
Well, here it
Merit,
says,
competency, and they're considered all three equal. They're not considered more important or the other.
because here it's listed, the district shall consider cultural or linguistic expertise and seniority, and may consider merit and competency.
Yeah.
So that means those will be above the other one, and when I'm reading it at least.
Are you saying because there's a difference between shall and may?
Yeah,
Mhm.
so that means they will consider those two and may consider the other two. But the way the ORS is written, you know, it has them all. Where it looks like A, B, C, D, E. So it's not like you have to do these two, but you don't have to use these. So it's discretionary.
I mean, this language should track the ORS, correct?
Correct.
I have to read the ORS again. Whole thing. I guess the thing to me that stands out is, she's on the page. The final paragraph, nothing in this policy is intended to interfere with. To me, that gives the flexibility to the board to do considerations for all of those areas, right?
Yeah, but it's saying the district will present to the board. So it'll be at their discretionary level, not at our discretionary level. So the superintendent shall bring a list. And that's the criteria she'll use. Or whatever superintendent will use.
Is this template language out of OSBA? Oh, okay,
Yeah, the answer is yes.
what's that?
Yes.
It's going right out of OSBA's.
If there were any suggestions to revise any of the language, we would send it back to policy or Google and have them say yes or no.
Yes or no, okay, because it deals with the ORS.
I just wonder, since there were, these red lines were from Crystal, if we might ask her why, she interpreted these sort of three as shalls and merit and competence as mays. I mean, she said this is in accordance with Oregon law, so she was apparently interpreting the law as saying one thing. But it sounds like at least there's some reading the law differently, so.
Well, the ORS has, I can send this to you. Has the competency, the cultural or linguistic expertise and everything listed in a single document. And it doesn't take precedence over the other qualifications that would be considered. So that would be something that I personally would want maybe to take out may, and the district shall consider all of these things in accordance with Oregon law, not those to take priority over anything else.
Since this is first reading, would Lisa be able to give us an opinion as to the change in that? If we were to change any verbiage on that
It would be Haley Purcell. I would call her and
at
it
OSBA,
was weird, yeah,
because we're changing the,
I'm reluctant to interpret the law.
Yeah.
Since I'm not a lawyer. But I think there's a reasonable question
sure,
to address, so it would be good to have Haley Purcell's interpretation of that.
so with that, because this is first reading, so we're not actually adopting it at this point, if we went to.
I would-
If we had an interpretation from legal, would a written interpretation help?
Yeah, I would prefer that with the AR because it seems like it's like that in the AR as well.
Okay.
And I would prefer that we just table it till next work session and have legal chime in before I actually voted to approve it.
Well, we're not voting to approve today, right? It's-
Yeah, they
It's-
wanted first reading.
It's a
Well,
first
it's
reading,
just the first reading.
yeah,
That's
and that
not
gives us
approving
time
that.
to go back and and clarify some of that.
Yeah, I mean, the AR specific, like, to me, it follows in step with the way GCPA is written, and so if there's an issue with GCPA, then the AR needs to follow, okay?
So,
Sorry, Glenn, just a process question.
Go ahead.
Are we going to be going through each of these individually or,
Well, there's only 4 here, but I think we'll do 2 at a time, obviously.
Okay.
If somebody wants to motion on that, or we can take them all as a group. I don't know if you want to give us, if we're ready to move on. We haven't had a motion yet, but we could certainly, if you want to give the background on those other 2, is there?
Sure.
well, I had a comment on the AR, so just
Okay,
want to
go
understand
ahead.
if you wanted to sort of deal with the first one first and then we can come to the AR, or if you'd prefer to deal with
Sure.
them together. I guess the only question I had on the AR is, or comment, I guess, is that, you know, the front end of the AR has defined terms, and competence, cultural and linguistic expertise are both included. Definitions are included. And seniority is defined in a footnote 2 on page 2, but merit is not defined in the AR, and I'm just wondering why, since all of those sort of characteristics are addressed in the policy, but merit seems to be the only one that doesn't have a definition in the AR. So maybe that's another question we could
Yeah.
forward along.
Any other comments or background information we need to do on those first 2? Heidi, are you good with those first 2, at least as a first reading? We're not approving them, so.
You know, I joined late, so I don't want to comment right now because I didn't hear everything.
Okay, why don't you give us some background information on 3 and
Second.
4, since they're together as
They're
well.
again the same thing, the policy and the AR. And basically this reflects the significant changes that have occurred since 2009 in tracking and using data and coming up with a district level improvement program. which was established rather than a student achievement program. Because many of the activities and rate in which we measure and use data, given the changes that have happened since 2009, that the testing modules have changed, the test has changed. We've had, COVID, there, you can name all the ways in which the system that we had, when we were tracking longitudinal data, has been impacted by substantial changes. So in order for the progress to be used over time, we have to focus on a district improvement program that utilizes student data. And given the continuous improvement program and the new integrated plan, we have to be able to put it all on one explanation. What are we going to use? Because districts don't have to use the same thing. What we call the local data is as important as the state data, because the process of how you get to the test and the test results are both important. It's not just one or the other. And all of that has to be rolled into how our teachers train for that. Do they have the materials for that? Are they giving them time for that? Do they have professional development for that? And it's all wrapped into one thing. So therefore, there are significant changes in the evaluation process and how it's used. So this reflects a very important change. And as this is a first read, I'm just hoping that you will really look at it to understand what the differences are, and then have questions maybe in the second reading that we could address. I would definitely want to take our time with this particular one. There's a lot to it.
So I'm having a hard time on the AR portion of this with just some of the edits, like following which thing is actually proposed to remain in the document. For example, right after number 1, that sentence, is it once every 4 years? What's the period that we're looking at there?
Which one are you in?
I'm in the AR. So are the brackets of the text that's in there indicating inserted text or adopted, proposed adopted? What?
Sure, I can explain that for you. So, and actually added it to the agenda today. The shaded text is the changes. The bracketed text is a choice for boards to make. So do you want it, they're asking, once every 4 years, or do you want it biannually? That's a choice. So when they're in those brackets, it's like the will, shall, may. Okay. And the shaded is language that is changing from OSBA, and of course the strikeout means
Yeah.
removed.
I
Does
have,
that help?
yeah, I have 2 different colors of shading. Does it matter?
No,
I think I commented on one of them.
Oh, is that?
it
I
does
couldn't
not.
get it to,
And then red text versus black text.
I put, so on the top of the AR. Yeah. I wanted to leave with representation from the demographic groups of the school population. And I wasn't sure if that was leaving or staying, so I want to make sure that was in there. But I see now that it was the shaded. I wasn't sure if it was the brackets or that one, but I would be for the once every, what is that, 2 years? Biannually, is that what that? So I'd want once every 2 years personally. I will say I was really struggling, like where the academic achievement would fall in here, because I feel like that should be our focus. And it didn't really call out where we could, because in the number 3, it pretty much like deleted the academic achievement piece where we are keeping track to make sure that everything's going well.
Should be.
Yeah, there's some in under 2. It's not the exact same stuff, right? Academic outcomes on state and local assessments, GPAs, demographics, it's not all the same. And it's not school specific, right?
Right,
Or district specific.
right. So it would be more of like a statewide. And so it was really taking away the data components that, you know, we could hold this accountable to. So in 3, you know, they take away all the district identified benchmarks and goals for improvement of student achievement. And that was really concerning to me.
I think what they've done is they've rewritten it. For example, some of the methods that they used and no longer, and haven't been part of the model for quite some time. So we would replace the old language with the new ways that we do it now, which also, which continues going forward, also the academic outcomes, statewide and local and other assessments. So, they still include all of those points. We just have rewritten in the way it's actually used, both by the state and then by the district.
It just seems that, at least from my perspective, I understand that it's not about student achievement anymore in this document, but it seems like that's the core responsibility of the school board. And I'm really struggling with that component.
Well, one way I would ask you to consider it is when we're talking about a district improvement plan. What that means is each and every student, that is all students in the district, the entire district is accounted for all students in the district. And it doesn't just say individual students by themselves. It kind of raises the level of accountability to be district-wide. And it includes things that, may not show up in a test score, but what percentage of students are enrolled in advanced courses at each school level. And then by demographic, by among division. And then it says in E2E, completion rates by building, grade level, class, and district, including diverse populations. So they're making sure that we do it, that we at grade, content area, diverse population, demographic breakdown for what you're doing. So it's there. It's Diane.
You need to speak louder, Heidi can't hear you, but she can hear everyone else.
Some of that to me is down here, and well, I guess I assume that's number 5 still, but here about, state assessments, but also district specific goals, right? Identify benchmarks and goals, reporting to the community. So
Maybe if we left district in school and I'd feel better about it, it just seems like they're taking all of the tracking type methodology out of the policy, in my opinion.
Crystal, I read, I think it was in 2 that the data would be disaggregated to the, building grade level. Yeah, district and building level. So, and there's some reference down below that, this will be data driven. So am I reading that correctly to say that we will have data at the district and building level for these metrics?
Yeah, I guess my struggle is that we consistently do not have consistent data. So that's my.
Yeah, this is part of the reason why they're redoing all this, because the data has been challenging. to use.
Oh, yeah, I flagged it, so I flagged myself.
Okay, so the red font is something you added to this.
Yeah,
document?
so I could comment on it. So that was that's the piece, is that we don't see this on a regular basis, so I don't feel like it's strong enough.
So Did you just change the font color?
Yeah,
or
I
did you
just,
add
I
those
just
words?
add, no, I just
Okay.
did the font color.
Okay,
I didn't add anything.
okay.
Heidi, do you have any comments, questions, or feedback so we can move along?
No, this document is also a first reading, correct?
And I did have one question about the number, I think it's number 1, just at the top of the document here. Board members and students are bracketed but not highlighted, where it looked like most of the other brackets were highlighted. So just curious, like, does this imply that we've already agreed that those groups are going to be included, or is that optional as well? A choice we have to make.
You wanna? The brackets in,
So Richard, the bracketed language in there is a choice for the board.
Yeah, so board members and students are bracketed, but they're not highlighted, where the other bracketed language seems to be highlighted. So I just wasn't sure why.
is it?
Oh, because students is highlight or bracketed, see that? And
Yep.
when it's, and other, and in that highlighted sentence there, they're saying add the sentence.
Right. So I'm just curious why the other brackets were highlighted.
They don't because they're choices.
That are
Okay.
not, that are already in existing.
That text hasn't changed from the past.
Correct.
Oh,
Only
it's
Okay,
not.
gotcha.
changed, highlighted.
Okay, thank you.
But we don't have an existing AR that still has brackets in it. We have made a selection previously.
That's correct.
Correct.
And so if you
So
were
our
to go
previous
to your
selection
agenda, you click on current policy,
Current policy will show you what was already there.
then
Yeah.
you can compare the two.
Hmm.
Does that give you enough to go on
Mhm.
for question answering? I'll try and follow up with the notes that I have here too, so.
So do I hear a motion to
Can we do those separate?
deal with it? I'm not the maker of the motion, so.
I want to vote two different ways.
The board will-
I move that we have first reading for GCPA, GCPA, AR, IMB, IMB, AR.
A second.
I have a motion, a second. Is there discussion?
I would say I support the IMB with some of the changes that we talked about. I will not be supporting GCPA, GCPA, AR, even as a first reading, because that leads to the impression that we're approving that as written.
Any other discussion?
Glenn, this is Rich. I was just wanted to see how we were going to handle the questions that we had talked about, referring back to the drafter. And whether we should expect a response back before second reading.
Yes, so I think we need some clarifying legal language on shall, may, on the first part of this. And I've got a list of notes here. I think you probably got better notes, Diane, as to questions, but then also we would need to choose if we move to a second adoption, which one of those bracketed forms we'd want to go with. This is basically just to put the information out to you, so we have a working document to go off of. So does that answer, Richard?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Yep. Any other discussion? So we have a motion and a second on the table. We'll go ahead and take a vote. I will do it by, let's do a roll call vote. Bill? Aye. Christie?
Aye.
Crystal?
No,
Heidi? Richard?
Aye.
Chair votes for. So those are for first reading, and we will have some investigative work to do on it, before we deal with this for a second reading, so. Okay, so based on this, I have Mike up next with a soccer presentation. So, go ahead and come on up, you can sit here. How I envisioned this was different than a public comment. The board's inviting you, so we would like to have a pretty free exchange of great information.
Love
So
it.
if you have questions of us, and we will probably have questions of you.
Okay.
Also caveat it with, this is a community-driven project, and the board does not have the money to throw at you. If that makes sense.
Yeah, there's
Budget
no surprises there.
Sure.
And I think that was some of the questions that we had was generally, is this a plan that makes sense? How does the community and the board, how do we support each other?
Yeah.
In moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, so I don't want it to be super structured, you know, if you guys
Yeah.
want to interact, please do.
So-
So that's okay with my board members. So,
So last month, we had 3 minutes, right, in the public section, and I spewed out a bunch of stuff. I don't know if it was coherent or if I should review that with you as a starter. Everybody should have a physical copy that you can review. If you guys just want to dive in with questions and comments, we can do that, or I can sort of just paraphrase where we're at with the work that we've done to date. Does that make sense?
that'd be good.
Yeah.
I would, yeah, I'd like kind
of.
of a status update,
Yeah.
maybe, and, you know, where you're at in the process probably, so.
Yeah, sounds good. Interestingly enough, there was one of our senior girls soccer players signing for Linfield today.
Just saw that.
And mentioning that it's been 2 years today since we won the state title for the girls soccer program. So
Yeah.
it's a nice opportunity to remember that. So again, we were looking for support around North Marion High School soccer. And I think this is inclusive of boys and girls teams and sort of the lack of facility, as everyone knows. Both teams, JV and varsity, practice in the same physical space, which is the JV baseball field. And with that much minutes of time, by the time the end of the season comes, the field is really unplayable. So we were looking for opportunities to offload some of the work, to expand the field so that it met the NFHS field size or dimension requirements. And then look to the future where we could play games at night so that parents and the community could come enjoy varsity soccer at a very high level for 4A. And then finally, you know, keep all those home playoff games at home. Okay, so in the packet, we talked about a 3-phase solution. And this is something that we spent quite a bit of time thinking about. How do we put a program together that can build on itself over time, knowing that the district isn't sitting on millions of dollars to just go fund a big project all on day one. Okay. So the first thing that we talked about doing was introducing practice fields in the Johnston Farm property. And on, I think it's roughly page 3, there's an overhead view that has fields laid out. There's a little bit of overlap. It's an irregular shape. So we couldn't get 2 full fields the way that we might want. But we felt like it's close enough that you could irrigate 2 fields and then offload all of your practice for JV, varsity, boys and girls over to that property. And then save the JV outfield as a varsity game field only, no practices. Okay. So I wanna, and then the second part of that phase was, and I don't think there's really significant dollars in this, is to expand the grass field, keep it grass, have it grow into first base and second base of the JV baseball diamond. So we would have to add some turf in those dirt dugout areas. And then down the first base line where there's fencing and the dugout for the players, we'd have to make some modifications there. But the idea is to make that wide enough to make the NFHS requirements for length and width. And so that's, I want to just pause there. Like that's phase 1 of the project is offload with practice fields, and then expand the existing field and have it isolated just for varsity games. Questions about that?
So JV would not be playing at home because the other two fields aren't.
I think you could play JV on that field, or you could play it on the practice fields. I think you can.
So they're not
sort of-
as strict with the
They can
rules and
choose.
regulations?
Well, I mean, we've been playing with it under dimension as far as
Oh,
I
okay.
know forever.
Okay, I'm just checking to make sure that there won't be a,
I think the only time it came up that I'm aware of is when Woodburn came to play during the playoffs, they cited a concern of lack of proper dimensions.
Mhm.
We played there anyway.
But the fields on, the practice fields would be at a minimal dimension. As they're on here anyways.
Yeah, we drew them all out at 110 by 70 for both practice fields as well as the varsity
Mhm.
game field.
Okay,
Or maybe we should just call it the game field.
okay.
So the practice fields are 110 by 70, is that what you said?
Yeah,
I
I
think
think
the
we're
map on the one that's furthest towards the middle school says 210, unless I need glasses again.
Yeah, that looks
Yeah.
like same dimensions as the game field.
some of them are in feet and some of them are in yards, and we could fix that.
That's okay.
But dimensionally, they should be all the same, which is
Okay.
the 110 by 70.
So that's your yards and it looks like feet is on the.
Yeah.
On the drawings.
And because I don't know, 110 by 70 is not standard. That's too small. Is that what you're saying?
No, these are to specification.
Okay,
So it's just like football fields are all the same width and the
Okay.
same length. Soccer fields are not. There's a minimum and a maximum that you have to be within. Our current field is below the minimum.
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then if you turn to 4 and 5 in the packet, you can see a little bit of a blowout. And we could definitely update the drawing so that they're all in yards instead of feet. So there's no confusion there.
I'm gonna start asking questions. if Nobody else does, shockingly. Real shocked, right? So what about, you said the overlap with the JV baseball field? You'll have to remove some structure. Does that mean that's no longer a baseball field?
No, I think we would leave it as a baseball field. We would have to change the configuration for, I think that's the home field dugout down the first base line.
So there's two fences there. There's
Uh-huh.
one that protects the players from the field, and
Right.
then there's a fence behind where the dugout is, and the fence continues on out into the. I don't know about where first base is.
Yeah, so
So you could remove that fence that's behind, and then you would be able to expand the field, probably not. As drawn here, but it would get it within the minimum range. And then, like you said, we'd have to turf in first and second base during our season. And then, just like they do every year, they go out there and they cut it out and they kill
Yeah.
the grass and they
Okay.
replace it. So it's not it's not an additional work that you're really doing except for getting grass put in there before our season.
Okay,
yeah, and we did have Randy Brock in our working group in the committee, so like he's super supportive of us making the modifications to get the extra width.
so then the dotted line that's outside of the game field, is that like spectator area? Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, so on the, like the bus lane roadside, the right side is generally where you have the player benches, any camera equipment. So yeah, it's just it's a buffer, for spectators not to encroach upon.
Okay, where would you envision stands or? seating?
On the it's on the concrete pad, right? So on the concrete pad down the left side of the field, which is the
Here.
baseball third base line.
So
there's-
it's still the same,
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah.
Is that adequate? I don't know.
As far as like capacity,
Well, yeah, I mean. you're
well,
having a much
hopefully not.
bigger-
Long term,
I'm just saying,
I
like,
mean,
if you're,
I think if we get to the point where we're having games at 7 o'clock at night under the lights, you extend the concrete pad and you add stands.
but there is room there, right? Like. you're
You
not
just
gonna-
keep going.
You
out
just keep
the side.
going down the
Current-
side.
Currently,
Uh-huh,
parents keep it's like going to a youth soccer game, they bring their
Right.
chairs and they sit on
Sit
the
right
sidelines. And then stands are there available to build up.
Should I keep going?
Yeah.
Yeah, for a little bit.
Okay. Irrigation rates, what are the irrigation?
Yeah, is
Availability.
Linda on? Linda, do you want me to cover irrigation? I think you had a better handle on that than I did.
Yeah, I can mention something. So on the Johnston property side, we have a main line that comes out somewhere around this sidewalk here. I haven't looked at exactly where, but maintenance has it marked for us. So it comes from across the road and irrigates this whole property. So since we have main line, to go ahead and put underground sprinklers should not be a problem, because we have it to, I think, about right here somewhere. It could be up here, but I think it's back here. So.
And then what about traffic flow from, high school to get to practice field? How do you, I don't know about soccer, but most sports are starting pretty much right after school, which is gonna interfere with the younger kids pick up, right? The younger districts pick up and all that, how are you gonna manage 20 soccer players moseying across during pickup time?
Yeah, do we just have the single crosswalk between the intermediate school and the middle school?
Yeah,
As far as I know.
that was regulated
Yes,
too,
yes,
wasn't it, by ODOT? Didn't ODOT have a chime in on?
I mean, that road is always,
That's designed for school day. And it's the primary design. You can't change the design for anything but school day. So that's why there's only one crosswalk.
Okay.
They would only allow crosswalks so far, so much distance between them. And so that was the issue to get more. We were lucky to get this one.
Yeah.
Like,
So-
you get what?
so students would walk from the high school down to the middle school crosswalk and then over, because it's still school day for some buildings. Just
Well,
asking.
that's what we hope for.
Well, I mean, maybe that's warm up. I don't know. Maybe they could run there.
Yeah.
But, yeah, and then, same traffic flow leaving and,
The high school
parking and all that, that's-
parking, they have to come out onto
Yeah, here.
Eads Ferry, correct? Because the other exit is not a left turn.
This one?
right, they, right, they,
This-
right,
you're saying this is right turn only.
That's right turn only.
right,
So they would have to, if they were to drive to the middle school parking lot,
right.
they'd have to come out during a super high traffic time.
You guys have had practices before over behind the middle school.
Yes.
Do the kids drive over or do they?
No.
They would drive, some walk. Depends on their age and what building.
Maybe
they're
there's
at.
maybe there's a standard or an expectation.
It would just be setting safe rules and making sure that they're following them.
Mhm.
We typically, especially girls, tend to start practice a little bit later, like 3:10, 3:20. So there's time for them to take care of whatever business they need to after school, so. If
Yeah.
there's enough time for kind of things to clear out a little bit and right before the primary school traffic comes in, it might be safe for them to go and park at the middle school.
Yeah. I'm not in the know. I don't know what time the younger building traffic starts, but it gets pretty intense.
Let's not talk about
Right.
cars.
It's an issue. It's, and then I guess the other thing I'm thinking here is, access to bathroom and that kind of stuff. Once they're out there, you're gonna need porta potties, something.
Yeah, on the
Quite far
practice
from the
fields.
building. Uh-huh.
Yeah, we talked about some potential bathroom spots around the expanded varsity field, but no facilities around the practice field. So that's something we'd have to add in.
There's typically a porta potty right there at the corner between the middle school and I don't know who's paying for that one, and that's
Yeah,
athletics or if it's, but it's
Down
something.
the
There's
baseball
typically
line.
one
Yeah.
right here
that
on
would
that
be
side of that
useful.
fence that's currently there.
I don't know, but I've seen it there.
My last question on this page. What about like ball traffic onto Boonesbury there with that?
Yeah, we think we'd want to do fencing there. There's some fencing line item in the budget for the turf field. We didn't explicitly call one out for the practice fields, but you would need fencing there.
There's balls going onto that, even with fencing,
Right,
even with netting.
right,
Yeah, but a significantly smaller percentage.
Yeah.
Like not all of them.
okay.
The nice thing is that field that's closest to it is going that direction. And the one that's going the other way has a pretty good buffer.
Yeah, so we talked about that, like if you ended up doing, well, even with balls going into whoever this property is, right? Or if you put lights over there, right, then there's some potential research you do with the neighbor to make sure you're not inconveniencing or causing a concern.
Yeah.
Don't worry, the county will let us know everything we have to do. Ask them. They'll give
Well,
us the
At
list.
least it's just the county,
Yeah.
okay? All right, part two is pretty straightforward. What we'll talk about for a couple minutes is field lights. So no expectation to light the practice fields, but an expectation to light the varsity game field. Okay? And we didn't get the quote back from the light provider. Randy was working on that. He had one for baseball that he was having amended so that it would include the JV baseball space with additional poles. And what we could do is add lights on both sides down the baseball third baseline. So those are directed towards baseball and towards soccer. And then add additional poles somewhere along the bus road to finish the lighting project. And those poles, and that was a little bit of a, somewhere between $50,000 and $75,000 per pole, if you're doing budgeting. And those are all LEDs and steel, and they sit on concrete base and should last significantly longer than the wood versions. But our request there was, if there's a project put together to redo the baseball lighting, then add those two additional poles, right? And then light that field up.
Well, if you're digging up and stepping in infrastructure, it would make sense to do
Save
additional
money.
And
infrastructure.
just make a nice field on top of it, right?
Yeah.
So that your cost sheet here says 4 units, but you really would only need 2. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm under. So there's a configuration that could come back as 6 lights, depending on how much of, if you do a standard soccer field, you need 4 poles. If you extend, like we had in phase 3, the turf field, we had said turf the entire area, they might come back and say 6 to light up the whole area, because from a square footage perspective, it's like double what you would get out of a soccer field. So we would really need to talk to the lighting experts to really dial that in. So I would say it could be 2 at best case to get the soccer field specifically. If you wanted to light up and turf the whole area, then you might need to add 2 additional, right? From 2 to 4.
And some of those would be shared with baseball.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
so. Okay,
Yeah, I think Randy said the baseball configuration was 6 poles. And like I said, I don't have that quote. That's something we're working on.
okay.
So that's part 2, that's field lights. And then part 3 is what do we want to do so that you have a surface that you can or play on all the time year round, right? Do we want to do artificial turf or not? And I think there's been a lot of conversation, like we're a grass kind of community, right? With really large grass businesses just down the road. But I think even with offloading the work, I don't know that that field is playable, you know, for boys and girls soccer into the full season and into the playoffs. But I do know with turf, we could use it year round. You can use it for your PE classes, you can use it for community athletics and lots of other opportunities besides JV baseball and soccer. In the quote for turf, like I said, there's sort of two perspectives. One is you deploy a soccer field, 149,000 square feet, put in the light standards. And then we have a breakdown of cost for that. The breakdown of cost that I added in was if we took the whole field from the bus road to Boone's Ferry to the tennis courts to baseball and turfed as much of it as we could, which I think this is a typo. Let me look at my notes. I can't remember if that's the square footage for a soccer field or if that's for the full school. Okay. I can take that as a follow-up though. I can't find it in my notes.
With the entire area for, you could, baseball, JV baseball could still be played on there. Whereas if we just turf that area, then JV baseball will most likely have to be moved somewhere else.
Yeah.
And then you could also, with that much area turf, you could move practices to there because you can basically practice side to side. There's not just general space there to practice, plus with lights, you can stagger practices into the evening as well.
Yeah, what Randy was talking about was they have like rolling backstops. And so you could move the JV baseball backstop to like the corner of Boone's Ferry and the bus road. Or one of the other corners of the facility. And then you have inserts in the turf for your bases. But it's basically the whole baseball field.
What's the expected lifespan of turf?
The guys that we talked to at Portland City United, that's a soccer club out of Portland. They have deployed, I don't know, dozens of fields. They say that you budget for about 8 years, but they've seen turf lasting anywhere between 10 and 12 with the surface that they're using. We talked with Grady Johnson, who's done some field turf repair for like Portland State and Staten. He said a lot of local communities have done the dig out and the base rock buildup as a community and not done it correctly. And so they go in and repair a bad deployment. And when you do that poorly, the drainage impacts the turf and impacts the life. So you don't get as many years out of it. So, and you can see in the budget breakdown, there's a significant amount of expense in the excavation and the rock fill to build up that drainage base. But the nice thing there is when the original turf field has expired, right? So your 8 to 12 years has come up. You do minor repairs to that base layer, and then you put the new turf down at just the cost of the turf, instead of having to redo all of the excavation and the base build up. So that's where the savings comes in. If you're envisioning doing this at least 2 times, if you're only going to do it once, you're not going to get that cost savings.
I have a question, Heidi.
Yeah, hey Heidi.
There's been discussion for years about, turfing the football field, which is already lighted with spectator stands and facilities there, that could be used by football and soccer. Can you comment on the pros and cons of that?
Yeah, that's definitely something that we talked about. And there's a couple things that came up that sort of resonated with me. One is, should we turf the football field? Yes, we should totally do that. It doesn't create a space for either soccer program if you go that route. If you use your soccer field laid out over a turf field for football, it's pretty common. But even the width of the field is really tight. And so you see a lot of high schools where they have the soccer lines, they go well past the football sidelines, and you sort of run into the track. And so dimensionally, it's not quite right. And so for us, you know, as a soccer community, right, and wanting to support boys and girls soccer, like we want a space for them. We want them to have facilities and feel like this is something that they've worked towards and they've earned, and they've got a first-class place that they could go play. And then the last part was, from a practice and a game perspective, you know, when does soccer boys and girls practice during the fall season when football is also practicing, right? And how do you make that work so that everybody's getting enough time to practice and play on that single field?
Yeah, Heidi, for what it's worth, I think Wilsonville does that. They have varsity football, men's and women's varsity soccer, and varsity lacrosse all playing on the turf football field and practicing.
Can be good.
I believe Wilsonville though has about 4 or 5 other turf fields. around.
Secondary turf fields, and
Yeah.
Canby just added an additional turf field, yeah.
I guess I'm looking at, you know, if you're gonna fund a turf field, can we support, you know, like a separate football and a separate soccer field? And these are just questions. Not saying we should or shouldn't. Can you tell me on the football field, would it meet the minimum requirements for a soccer field? Just a question.
I think it would, definitely by length. I'm not sure about the width. We'd have to go measure it and see if we could get to the minimum width, Heidi. I suspect that because other high schools are playing that way that it does, but I haven't run the wheel on them, so I don't know off the top of my head.
You typically get
Are they 65?
close to the minimum size, but not the recommended size. And that's where you get, in this space, you would be able to get to the recommended size, not the minimum size.
Yeah. Yeah, and Heidi, this question had come up before, and you know, my answer was, would we love to play on a turf football field? Yes, right? Because when we take playoff games to go play at Canby and Woodburn and everywhere but North Marion, that's where we play, right? We play on a turf football field. Not an ideal conclusion to what we want to accomplish, but it's better than what we have.
If you're looking for comments, I will say, I like the idea. I mean, there's a lot of great stuff here. And I think with the practice fields, that's something that we should definitely look into more. I share some of the concerns already expressed about, you know, sanitation and restroom facilities being handy and accessible. Let's see, fencing, things like that we could address. Thank you, but I'm sure you have more to your presentation.
No, I think we sort of covered the highlight, Heidi. So I think from takeaways for us, we would want to follow up with parking, transportation between the sites, bathroom facilities, fencing. And so we can go update the sort of phase 1 version of the document so that it includes all those details.
Can I ask where you guys are as a group organizationally? Do you have a functioning, for lack of a better word, board, or who's driving, you know, who's doing the major driving? Is it just you yet?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do we have a board? No. Do we have interested coaches and parents and community members? Yes. We talked to the Boosters Club and they're supportive if we needed backing of a 501c.
Okay.
That they're available. Portland City United is also a 501c, like they're supportive. If we want to, you know, leverage them for any part of the project, they're like, we love to see fields deployed and we can do 0 or 100% of whatever the project that you
We'll
want.
take 100%.
Well, that's the most expensive bill. You know, so I think that we can put a committee and a board together. The Portland guys were really good and they talked about, you know, have somebody from the school board or the district, have somebody from the project team and then a third, person maybe that's in charge of financing. And keep it small and tight and accountable.
Yeah.
And then, just go out into like, what can the district offer from funding? What can the community fundraise for? How do you divide up the line items of funding and expense so that it makes sense? And I think for us, we wanted to do a reasonable amount of work so that we had a plan that made sense. But we didn't know where the district and the board and the community sort of was. Is this something we're interested in? Is this a good plan? Should we move forward? Should we go, Linda and I were talking about, should we go figure out more things related to water and does it meet the needs or not? And my answer was, let's wait and see, is this the right project to continue forward with or not? And I think that's what we're looking for support from you guys is this a good plan? Should we continue forward with it? Should we socialize it? Should we continue the next steps? Sort of, with your endorsement and blessing? Or should we go back to the drawing board and make alterations or adjustments and keep reconfiguring it till we get there?
Do you guys want to chime in on that question?
Bill, you want to start? You want me to start? I would say I'm definitely in full support overall for all of it. I am hesitant though to commit to the turf if we're responsible every 10 years or so to replace it. It makes me nervous that if soccer has this turf field and other people put turf fields in, then we're having this rolling impact that we're not prepared for as a district. But I do believe, you'd spoken about a grant writer. I love that. I definitely think phase 1 and 2, if you find funding for it, I would be in support of. I would be a little more hesitant for the third one unless we have a long-term replacement cost.
Yeah, you want to, my hope would
Yeah.
be that those dollars on that 8-year schedule, those dollars are going in every year. And so that when you hit that mark, if it's time to replace it, you do it. And if it can last a couple more years, then you just keep building the fund and it makes it a sort of zero worry concern. Yeah.
And the only other two things I would say is, yes, fencing and then figure out the bathroom scenario.
Okay.
You have any comments?
I'm all for supporting kids playing soccer and really nice
Mhm.
facilities and across the board with sports. So, I'd love to see community engagement and coming up with a plan and all of that kind of stuff. I think we need a really coordinated approach, like Glenn was getting at.
Yep.
And then, some of the big logistical things that we talked about today. And then we need to have a plan for the future, not just
Yeah.
like, what does that actually look like year after year? How is that savings going and where it's going and who is in charge of that?
Yeah, it's definitely a multi-year commitment. And I guess that would be I'm definitely in favor of it. My daughter's played soccer and I would love to see upgraded facilities here. I really would.
Yeah.
However, I also know the district is not, financial constraints are what they are, but, truly having, I see what the auction has done over years and years, and there's being involved there and having a group of, dedicated people who are willing to put in some sweat equity and some time and build an organization that will really support it long term. I definitely see that as valuable for the district, for our kids and for the program long term.
Yeah, Heidi or Richard, do either of you have comments?
I guess first, oh, go ahead, Heidi. Did you have something?
Go ahead, Richard.
Okay, I just had a question about the farm property. I recall seeing a document, I thought it was a district document, not sure if it was the master plan or maybe a bond related document that suggested some programming for that property. Can anyone sort of comment on that? Like what aspirations the district had for using that property? Where the practice fields are suggested?
We definitely, yeah, we definitely wanted to put fields in of some sort there. And I do believe at one time, when we were doing pre-bond work, after the bond passed, or before the bond passed, another phase of another bond would have been to put concessions there with restrooms. And I believe the capacity of that well there will take care of that. So
Okay.
that was a dream of the districts years ago.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Linda.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I guess just generally, I mean, I'd love to see improved facilities for all of our athletes, you know, soccer players included. I guess to Glenn's point, I mean, the district is dealing with limited resources, and you know, so I guess I would like to see some reflection of priorities in these plans as well. You know, if we had to sort of choose what would be most important from the athlete's, you know, point of view, what would that be? And you know, if the community is able and willing to step up and help make these things become a reality, it'd be great if the district could find some way to support it as well.
Yeah, and I think just to answer that part of that question, Richard, our intention was to lay out a plan in phases by priority, right? So keep it in grass, offload the field with practice fields, right? That's what helps the program the most today.
And one
Yeah,
other
great. Thank you.
One suggestion for the board to consider. Other school districts have, they annually review their facility use fees for outside groups. And this is a way in which they generate funds to replace their fields and repair their fields. So it's not about it's an attempt to save taxpayers from having a large bill at one time. So it's been a long time since this district has reviewed its facility use policy and costs. And we could probably regain some of the money that we're looking for by making our fields available to people who are willing to pay to use them.
Yeah. With the turf fields, when we rent them out, it's about $100 an hour. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that seems
There's
to be
different fees based on
Yeah.
what you're using it for. but
a rough or good average to use if we were renting out turf. I don't know what it is for Metro Grass, if there's some different value there, but I agree, right, that you know, when the facilities are under use, right, you're burning those dollars that are invested and you want to be able to replace them somehow.
The question for the board and is the process, we've put a lot of work together coming up with this plan to present to you and the concept moving forward. I'm just wondering, like, how do the next steps work? This is new to all of us, so we presented to you, like the idea, if we're working with, you know, fundraiser entities or people donating time, materials, or whatever, what kind of permissions do we need before we could, like, you know, go out there and start shoveling out dirt or something, you know?
Yeah, full permits. Yeah, we touch the school district now, we have to full permits. Talk to Linda. Linda she understands that process upside.
Yeah, I understand that there's gonna be permitting and things like that, but I'm saying, like,
You're
the
looking for
go
permission.
ahead, like,
You're
to
looking for
start
agreement.
looking to find that next, like, okay, we're ready to go find that permit, and now this is gonna cost us much, we're looking to go find who's gonna pay for that, but, you know, is it a cycle where you keep coming back to the board, or is it something that say, okay, you guys have to go ahead, check in with us every so often, or I just don't I don't know the process, so.
So the idea that we had, I thought was really good about having a board member.
Yeah, that would probably be establishing a conduit that is permanent in basis between the board and you guys. Probably would be really, really helpful for both parties.
Okay.
And I think it would keep both of them well informed. You know, they can report, whoever's representative there could report back, and I don't need, you don't want to make your group get too big. I understand keeping it tight and small, but I think that would probably be helpful for you guys to continue to move along and for us to be able to also support you however we can in actually making, progress towards
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. Okay.
And I would suggest that the board pick someone and then have that person commit to walking through the project with them until they're done. Because that's a big task. It's kind of like the bond. We had board members that volunteered to walk through the bond until it was done. So that's the level of commitment. that we need. And it's a worthwhile project. It should be done.
Yeah, it really is. I think
Yeah.
the time has arrived for very good.
So,
Um,
so maybe you could gather the board and decide who's going to be the liaison. That will work with them and have that conversation. Get that.
We can't hear you, Ginger.
Yeah, you can do it.
So we were chatting about having a representative from the board here be part of their group or be an interface or conduit for their group. And I'm not sure, without putting somebody on the spot tonight, if anybody's prepared to step up and do that.
Well, yeah, you should have conversations about it. I'm sure
Yeah.
Linda will have some great insights about how that should go, what it should look like.
Yeah.
So that, you know, the conversation continues and.
So why don't you let us internally work on that? And, you know, see what we can come to, and give us some feedback too. What you're looking for, what kind of, regularity you plan on meeting, sort of what your timeline is to.
Yeah, timeline.
You know, timeline on some of these steps. Are we talking, you know, months away for some of these to begin? Are we talking years? You know, a little bit of timeline on some of that. Obviously, I know a lot of it is dependent on finances, but.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, you know, we'd probably like a little bit of interface from you, and maybe I'll just reach out to you.
Sure.
Directly, and then we can kind of coordinate that, so.
Yeah, that'd be good. I think there will be moments where we're like, okay, we have the funding to get irrigation
Yeah.
to these two fields, right? And so let's get that.
Yeah.
Going and done. And so there's a lot of coordination.
Yeah.
And then we're like, okay, now we're stuck on lights. We're short $300,000. Let's fundraise for however long that takes and go do that.
And I guess from the board standpoint too, just the understanding that, and not to put cold water on anything, I think there's, you know, really support to make this happen. But every time a new structure gets put on district property, ultimately the district becomes liable for it.
Yeah.
In terms of maintaining it, keeping it up, you know, making sure it's properly permitted, and so, you know.
And our
there's just some-
insurance goes up.
What's that?
And our insurance goes up.
Yeah, and our training. So, you know, just the oversight from that side, not to try and shut it down, but to just make sure that there's an eye on that. So, so that, you know, we're maximizing both of our efforts, to a point where it can continue and sustain itself.
Okay.
And Hilda Roselli is an excellent choice as a grant writer. I don't know where you got connected with her, but she's amazing. Excellent choice.
Jervis is a good help.
Oh,
Thank you.
So, yeah, I appreciate you guys coming. Really appreciate you guys, all the research you've done and all the work you've, I know it's not, you haven't just started, like, you've got hours now into it already, so.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, thanks for giving us the time and we'll look forward to hearing back from you.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's at least one person who wants to step into that spot and they may or may not be here tonight. Thank you.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks.
Carter indicated by his absence that he loved the bond.
All right, we have one other thing, and that's. Actually, can we just ask you directly, Leah?
Sure.
What would be a good time for us to come see you? Not to put you on the spot or anything, but.
Not a graduation.
Probably second, third week of one of those. It's
So after May Day then.
yes. You can't. Before graduation.
Yeah, oh my calendar's taking forever. And what day of the week works better for you?
Thursdays or Fridays.
Okay. Eighteenth, 19th work for,
Or is that, you're saying 1819 or 1112?
Uh-huh. Either one.
Yes or no?
I'm open on all 4 days.
I have no preference.
Heidi, when are you back in town?
On the 19th.
No? That doesn't work for you?
No, it works for me, but. Is that a travel day or is she available on the 19th?
No, well. You said you're gonna be back in town by the 19th. Is that what I'm understanding, or you're not coming back until the 19th?
I travel back on the 19th.
Okay, so we're probably not gonna plan around you then.
Yeah.
Bill, do you have either one of those weeks that work better?
They're both the same.
Okay. You know what, we still have other schools that we are not gonna get in if we don't. So can we shoot for the 11th, 12th that week? Okay. You tell me what works better, Thursday or Friday?
Thursday,
Okay, so Thursday at 11?
what time?
I don't know.
How about 5:30?
We're closed.
How long do you want us there? How long, like what kind of,
I'm open for how long you want to be there, I want to show you as much as I,
so like 2 hours, too long?
2 hours.
Okay,
2 hours.
so 2 hours after your kiddos get in there, so you wanna like do like, I don't know, 9-ish? Okay,
Can I ask what we're talking about? I can't hear.
The high school visitation time,
For April, right?
May.
for May.
Oh, I'm back April 19th.
Okay.
So do you want to come on May 11th at 9:30 or 9 o'clock,
That's terrific. Thank you.
Okay,
30.
so May 11th.
8:30?
8:30 is a lot better.
Okay.
Okay, we'll do that then. Alrighty, it's already 7:17, so let's adjourn for 10 minutes, and then we'll be back with the business meeting, so. Okay. Oh my gosh, I gotta stand up.